He operated on children in places that don't exist on civilian maps, the retired colonel told me outside the funeral home. Go to Zurich. Ask for Dr. Harlan's file. They'll know what to do. I remember the rain more than anything else. It fell across Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery in soft, diagonal sheets, the kind that doesn't make noise but soaks through everything. The white headstones looked like teeth rising from the hillside, row after row after row, stretching toward the Pacific. There were maybe 6 people at the burial, a chaplain, 2 men in dark coats who never gave their names, my aunt, who flew in from Phoenix and stood under a black umbrella without speaking, and me. My father had been lowered into the ground 20 minutes earlier. No eulogy, no procession, no folder full of commendations read aloud to a crowd of old friends. Just a flag, folded sharp and handed to me with white gloves, and a name etched into stone that most people would walk past without pausing. My dad was a retired Army combat surgeon, 31 years of service. He never talked about any of it. Growing up in Carlsbad, California, I thought he was just a regular doctor who happened to wear dog tags in his nightstand drawer. He worked at a small orthopedic clinic after he retired, set bones, replaced hips, referred patients to specialists. He drove a 15-year-old Tacoma. He grilled tri-tip every Sunday. He read the paper front to back, including the classifieds, which I always thought was strange because he never bought anything. He died on a Tuesday. Massive stroke at his kitchen table. His neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, found him the next evening when she noticed his porch light was still on at noon. I was in a meeting when the hospital called. I remember pressing my phone against my ear and hearing a social worker say words that didn't fit together. I remember walking to my car and sitting there for 11 minutes before I could start the engine. He had no visible wealth. His house was paid off. Modest. 3 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A garage full of tools he actually used. His will was typed and notarized, filed with an attorney in Oceanside. The house went to me. His truck went to my brother, Marcus. Everything else, and there wasn't much listed, was to be handled at my discretion. Marcus called before the body was cold. Not literally, but close enough. So, what's the situation? He asked, like he was checking on a delivery. What situation? I said. The estate. The house. Whatever he had. I told him I hadn't even picked out a casket yet. Right, he said. But when you do get around to it, keep me in the loop. He hung up before I could respond. Marcus was 3 years older than me. He lived in Las Vegas now, which told you almost everything you needed to know. Not the Strip. A subdivision off the 215 with a pool he never cleaned. He sold solar panels. Before that, it was real estate. Before that, insurance. Before that, a gym franchise that folded in 8 months. Every few years, Dad would wire him money. Never a lecture, never a condition, just a transfer and a text that said, "Stay steady." At the cemetery, after the chaplain finished and the 2 strangers disappeared toward the parking lot, I stood alone with the rain pressing against my coat. That's when the colonel approached. He was maybe 70, 72, tall, lean, the kind of posture that belongs to men who've spent decades being watched by other men. He didn't salute. He didn't say his rank. I only knew because my aunt whispered it as he walked toward us and then quietly stepped away. He shook my hand. Firm but careful. Your father saved more lives than anyone I've ever known, he said. And I don't mean in the operating room. I didn't know what to say. Go to Zurich, he said. Ask for Dr. Harlan's file. They'll know what to do. He pressed a small envelope into my palm. Inside was a single card, cream-colored, no logo. A phone number with a Swiss country code and a name. Meyer. Handwritten in ink that looked old. He turned and walked into the rain without waiting for a question. I stood there holding the card until my fingers went numb. That evening, I drove to Dad's house. The smell hit me first: Old Spice, sawdust, and the faintest trace of rubbing alcohol. His reading glasses sat on the kitchen counter next to a half-finished crossword. Tuesday's crossword. He always saved Tuesday for last because he said it was the only day the puzzle tried to trick you. I opened cabinets. I looked through drawers. Tax returns going back 15 years, neatly filed. Receipts from Home Depot. A warranty card for a toaster he bought in 2014. Nothing strange, nothing hidden, everything ordinary. Then I found the photographs. They were in a metal box on the top shelf of his bedroom closet, behind a stack of old blankets. Not family photos, medical photos. Children, dozens of them, some in hospital beds, some standing, smiling, holding up drawings. On the back of each one, a name, a date, and a city. Amman, Erbil, Nairobi, Beirut. Dates spanning 18 years. My father had never once mentioned any of these places. At the bottom of the box was a leather-bound notebook. Inside, in his block-letter handwriting, were lists, names, ages, procedures, outcomes, cleft palate repair, facial reconstruction, burn debridement, limb salvage. Page after page, hundreds of entries. I sat on his bedroom floor and read until my back ached. Marcus texted at 10, "Let me know about the truck. I can come get it this weekend." I didn't respond. The next morning I called the number on the card. A man answered. Swiss accented English, precise and unhurried. I said my father's name. Silence. Then, "Yes. We have been expecting contact. When can you travel?" I told him I needed a week. "That is perfectly fine," he said. "Please bring personal identification, a certified copy of the death certificate, and any correspondence from Dr. Harlan you may have found." I asked what this was about. "It would be best discussed in person," he said, and ended the call. I booked a flight that night. I told Marcus I was meeting with Dad's attorney. He didn't ask which one. He asked if there was a life insurance policy. "I don't know yet," I said. "Check," he said. "Sometimes those are worth more than the house." The flight to Zurich was 11 hours. I spent most of it staring at the photographs. A girl, maybe 4, with a freshly sutured lip, grinning into the camera. A boy with burn scars across his neck, holding a toy truck. A teenage girl standing on new prosthetic legs, flanked by 2 nurses. My father had been in those rooms. My father had held those instruments, and I had never known. Zurich was cold and exact. Everything looked like it had been measured twice. The cab from the airport moved through streets that were quieter than any city I'd ever visited. No honking, no sirens, just the hum of the engine and the occasional rattle of a tram. The building was on a side street near the Limmat River. No sign, no name on the door, just a brass number and a buzzer. Inside, the floors were polished stone. A woman at a reception desk asked my name, made a call, and within minutes, a man in a gray suit appeared. "Miss Harlan?" "Yes, please." He led me down a hallway that smelled like cedar and paper. We entered a private office with tall windows overlooking the river. He closed the door softly and gestured to a chair. "I am sorry for your loss," he said. "Your father was extraordinary." I waited. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. Documents, account statements, investment summaries, all bearing my father's signature. "Your father established a charitable trust in 2004, he explained. "It has been actively managed and consistently funded for over 20 years. I looked at the numbers. I read them twice because the first time they didn't make sense. $14 million. My father, the man who resold his own boots, who ate the same lunch every day, turkey sandwich, apple, black coffee, who once told me the most expensive thing he'd ever bought was my mother's engagement ring, and even that was modest. "This can't be right," I said. "It is accurate," the man assured me. "Your father was a disciplined investor and a remarkably consistent contributor." "What was the money for?" He folded his hands. "The trust funded surgical missions in conflict zones and underserved regions. Pediatric cases, primarily. Your father coordinated with medical teams through a private network. He personally participated in many of these missions after his retirement from active duty." I thought about the photographs, the notebook, the names. "He flew overseas," I said, "to operate, regularly, 2 to 3 times per year. Always at his own expense, separate from the trust disbursements." I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. My father had been living a double life, not the kind with secrets and betrayal, the kind with purpose. "And me?" I asked. "You are the successor trustee. He structured the trust so that oversight transfers to you upon his death. The funds cannot be liquidated without your authorization." The room felt very still. He slid a second envelope toward me. "There is also a personal letter, per his instructions, to be delivered only after his passing." I picked it up. My name was written on the front in his handwriting. Steady, blocky, familiar. My phone buzzed. Marcus. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Heard anything from the lawyer?" he asked. Still going through documents, I said. Is there money? I looked at the number on the page. There's something. I need more time. How much time? His voice had an edge now. I don't know, Marcus. A few days. After I hung up, I opened the letter. If you're reading this, I ran out of time to say it in person. That's my fault. I should have told you sooner, but I've learned that when people hear about money, they stop hearing everything else. He explained the missions, the children, the network of surgeons he'd helped fund, some retired military, some civilian who traveled to places most doctors would never go. He wrote about a girl in Amman whose jaw had been shattered by shrapnel. He wrote about twin boys in Nairobi born with spinal deformities. He wrote about a teenager in Erbil who lost both hands and received prosthetics paid for by the trust. These are not statistics, he wrote. These are people I touched, literally. I held their faces, I stitched their skin, and when I couldn't be there myself, I made sure someone else was. The last paragraph was shorter than the rest. I didn't build this for recognition. I built it because silence and service aren't opposites. They're the same thing. Take care of what I started. Not because I'm asking, because you'll understand once you see it. I folded the letter and placed it in my bag. I didn't cry. I sat very still and let the weight of it settle. The banker returned with additional folders, anonymized records of the families helped by the trust. A 9-year-old in Jordan who could eat solid food again after reconstructive surgery. A mother in South Sudan whose daughter survived a cleft palate repair that would have been fatal without intervention. A boy in Lebanon who walked for the first time at age 7. I read every page. That evening, at the hotel, Marcus called again. "You're being weird," he said. "Just tell me what's going on." "Dad set up a trust," I said. "Overseas. It funds medical operations for children in war zones." Silence. "How much?" he asked. $14 million. The exhale was sharp. $14 million. And he drove that piece of crap truck. He had priorities. "Yeah," Marcus said, "and apparently his kids weren't one of them. That's not fair. Isn't it? I've been scraping by for 10 years. He could have set me up. Could have. He did help you. Multiple times. Loans aren't help. They're obligations with a father attached. They weren't loans. He never asked you to pay anything back." Marcus went quiet for a moment. "So what happens now?" "You split it? I'm the trustee. The money goes to the mission." "The mission," he repeated, like the word tasted wrong. "Surgical missions, children. And us? There are provisions. But the trust stays intact." "We'll see about that," he said, and hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed and reread my father's letter. Silence and service aren't opposites. I'd spent my whole life thinking my dad was reserved because he was distant. I was wrong. He was reserved because he was full. 2 weeks after I returned to California, Marcus filed a legal challenge. He hired a probate attorney out of Las Vegas who specialized in contested estates. The petition cited failure to disclose foreign assets, undue influence from unnamed third parties, and inequitable distribution among heirs. I hired a retired JAG officer in San Diego named Catherine Lowe. Silver-haired, sharp, calm, the way surgeons are calm. "This trust is airtight," she said after reviewing the documents. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing." "He usually did," I said. The first hearing was in San Diego, a small courtroom, beige carpet, a judge with reading glasses and no patience for drama. Marcus sat on the other side with his attorney, a man who talked fast and gestured too much. His lawyer argued the trust had been concealed, that it should be treated as part of the domestic estate, that Marcus had a right to equitable inheritance under California law. Catherine responded without raising her voice. "The trust was established 20 years ago under Swiss law, properly referenced in the decedent's will, and structured with full legal counsel. There is no concealment, there is no ambiguity." The judge ordered additional documentation and set a second date. Outside the courtroom, Marcus caught my arm. "You can end this right now." "How?" "Dissolve the trust, split it down the middle, $7 million each, walk away." "And the children?" "What children?" "The ones Dad spent 20 years helping." He stared at me. "I'm your brother." "I know. That's why this is hard." He dropped my arm and walked to his car. The second hearing brought the full weight of the documentation. Swiss bank certifications, investment records going back 2 decades, surgical mission reports, beneficiary outcomes, everything clean, everything meticulous. My father had kept records the way he kept sutures, precise, deliberate, nothing wasted. At the third hearing, something shifted. The colonel from the funeral appeared. He hadn't been subpoenaed. He came on his own. Catherine called him to the stand. He sat straight and spoke without notes. "I served with Dr. Harlan for 9 years across 3 deployments," he said. "He was the finest surgeon I've ever seen under fire." After he retired, he continued operating on children in regions where no one else would go. He funded it himself. He asked for nothing. Marcus's attorney tried to suggest the colonel had influenced my father's financial decisions. The colonel didn't flinch. "No one influenced James Harlan," he said. "He made decisions the way he made incisions, carefully, and only when he was certain." The courtroom was quiet after that. The judge's ruling came within the hour. The trust was valid. The petition was dismissed. No drama, no speeches, just a ruling read into the record and a gavel tapped once. Outside, Marcus leaned against the courthouse wall. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "You weren't going to budge," he said. "No, even against your own brother. Especially." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I always thought he was disappointed in me." "He wasn't. How would you know?" "Because he never stopped helping you. Disappointed people walk away. He didn't." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. $14 million fixing kids in countries I can't even spell, and I'm out here fighting over scraps." He laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was the sound of something breaking open. I didn't push. I let the silence do what silence does. He got in his car and drove away without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, I drove to Las Vegas. His subdivision looked the same, identical houses. Dead lawns, pools covered with tarps. His front door was open when I pulled up. He was sitting on the couch watching a baseball game with the sound off. "Figured you'd show up eventually," he said. "Can I come in?" He nodded. His kitchen counter was covered with mail, past due notices, credit card statements, a handwritten budget on a yellow legal pad that looked half-finished. We sat at his dining table. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "Good. I'm tired of fighting." Dad built a provision into the trust. A family stabilization clause. It allows me to allocate funds annually for immediate family members. He looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means I can help you. But it's structured. Financial counseling, debt management, controlled distributions tied to benchmarks." His jaw tightened. "So, I'd have to report to you, to an advisor." "Not me. And if I say no, then nothing changes." He stared at the muted television for a long time. He really thought of everything, didn't he? He thought in decades. I thought in weekends. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. We spent the next 2 hours going through his finances, what he owed, what he earned, what it would take to get him level within 3 years instead of drowning for another 10. It wasn't exciting. It was math and discipline and honesty. Before I left, he walked me to the door. "You really went to Zurich?" "Yes. And he really operated on kids overseas. For 20 years. In secret." "Yes." He shook his head slowly. "I thought he was small," he said. "I thought he was just quiet." "He was quiet," I said. "That's not the same as small." Marcus didn't respond. He just stood in the doorway as I walked to my car. When I looked back, he raised one hand. Not a wave exactly. More like an acknowledgement that something between us had shifted, and he wasn't going to pretend it hadn't. A year later, we stood together at Fort Rosecrans. Not because anyone required it. Because it was his birthday, November 3rd. He would have been 69. The headstone looked the same as it had on the day of the funeral. Clean, simple, no decoration. Just his name, his rank, his dates. The Pacific was gray behind us, and the wind carried salt. Marcus had changed. Not overnight, not dramatically. The way seasons change slowly, then suddenly obvious. He had completed 12 months of financial counseling, paid off 2 credit cards, closed a line of credit he never should have opened. He stopped chasing the next big thing and started showing up for the small ones. He sent me monthly updates, not because I asked, because he chose to. The trust continued exactly as Dad designed it. Surgical teams deployed to eastern Congo that spring. A hospital in northern Iraq received funding for a pediatric burn unit. 11 children in Jordan were scheduled for reconstructive procedures in the fall. No galas, no press releases, No donor walls. Just steady, quiet work. Marcus looked at the headstone for a long time. I used to think he was holding out on us, he said. He was holding something, I replied. Just not what we thought. Do you ever wish you'd just split the money? No, he nodded. Even when I sued you? Especially then. He almost laughed. You sound like him. I'll take that. We stood there a while longer. The flags along the cemetery rows moved in the wind the same way they had a year ago. Some things don't change. They don't need to. I was wrong, Marcus said quietly. About him. About you. About what mattered. I know. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. On the drive home, I thought about the first time I opened Dad's letter in that quiet office above the Limit River. When people hear about money, they stop hearing everything else. He was right. For weeks, Marcus only heard numbers. 14 million. His share. What he deserved. And honestly, I heard them too. 14 million can make your breath catch. But over time, the number faded. What remained was purpose. Dad hadn't left me money to enjoy. He'd left me a standard to maintain. There were nights when I felt overwhelmed. The paperwork, the coordination with surgical teams halfway around the world, the careful decisions about which cases qualified and how much to release. But every time I was tempted to simplify things, sell the assets, reduce the complexity, turn it into something easier. I thought about a photograph of a 4-year-old girl in Amman, smiling with a freshly sutured lip. And I thought about the man who held the needle. My father, who never once mentioned it at the dinner table. The trust will outlast me. It's designed that way. Succession protocols, legal safeguards, oversight layers that span continents. Dad built it to survive personalities, including mine. Marcus and I still disagree sometimes. We still carry history, but we no longer carry resentment into the room and set it on the table between us. He's not perfect. Neither am I, but we're steady, and that word means more to me now than it used to. If you've ever sat at a kitchen table after a funeral and wondered what someone really left behind, you know what I'm talking about. It's rarely just money. It's patterns, discipline, the quiet decisions they made when no one was watching, the lives they touched without needing anyone to know. My father was a retired army surgeon. No medals on the wall, no stories at dinner. He lived quiet, died the same way. But he didn't leave quietly. He left instructions, and he trusted me to follow them. If this story made you think about someone in your life, someone who served quietly instead of loudly, take a moment today. Call them if you can. Forgive them if you need to. Learn from them while there's still time. And if you believe that strength doesn't have to announce itself to matter, I hope you'll stay with this channel. Share your story below. Tell me what steady has looked like in your life. Because sometimes the greatest thing a person can leave behind isn't money. It's the proof that silence and service were never opposites. They were always the same thing.